And my triple cup, that's 2 times 2. Man, this shit dogging in the wartime, so
you know I'm ballin', usual like Kobe.
So let's segue into something different, a little bit non-basketball. So you're someone who I met in elementary school when you had just kind of moved from New York.
Yeah.
I went out and lived in Massachusetts for 3 years. We both lived on both coasts. So what was one of the big things you noticed when you first moved? Like, this is different, or was it all kind of the same?
I mean, the big thing I noticed, and like it's just not like nothing like sports related or anything, was that like schools had yards. So when I was a kid, like my school just had like this kind of like big concrete or big brick like area for us to play in. And my first school I went to school in Hancock Park. There was like this big field and handball courts and all this shit, and there was none of that. Like New York, they just don't have the space for that. So a lot of buildings are like, all the schools are in like kind of big buildings and stuff. And obviously the weather.
Yeah.
You come out here and the weather's gorgeous, and you know, you don't really have bad weather days. You know, and then I guess the other thing about LA's a lot calmer than the East Coast. I mean, I don't know what it's like in Amherst, but...
Well, Amherst is a college town, but like Boston is like, I want to say it's definitely not the hectic of New York whatsoever, but it's like, it's a small city, and there's a lot happening in that small city. LA's gigantic, you know, Chicago, New York. I mean, New York City is boroughs, but like LA, Chicago, London, like those are big cities I've been to that are just fucking massive.
Oh yeah, and I think that like LA is an anomalous city. You know, LA, you can kind of get everything, and you can, and especially just California. I mean, California is a place where you can go to the beach, the desert, and the mountains in the same day, and that's something that's kind of unheard of to anyone from the East Coast, especially in New York. You know, in New York, you're like, going to the beach is a huge fucking deal. You know, you gotta take a couple trains. You know, I mean, or you just if you live in the city, you take like the D train all the way down to Coney Island. You know, I mean, you know, but everything is so, you know, everything's so congested in New York, and you know there isn't much diversity as to like the actual like landscape of the city as there is to LA.
And one thing I also noticed about the East Coast mentality compared to the West Coast, at least this is an LA thing. I don't know if it's all of California, but in East Coast, it's a little more, people have a little more, you know, this is the way it has to be. When you leave college, you got to get a job. You're going to build your way up the system, build your way up the ladder, and this and that. And in LA, you have a lot of dreamers. You have a lot of, I can be whatever I want. I can run into Lil Baby on a restaurant and, you know, get his number and shit. Maybe stuff will change for me. Like, you have those type of people that are like, and that's actually something I like to an extent, because I believe, I mean, I used to have this mentality that, like, you know, you got to be realistic, but, like, fuck realistic. Like, a lot of shit happens that you don't expect in life. You know what I mean? Like, and you just got to...
I think that California, since it's kind of like, since like California first became a state, really, has been this opportunistic state.
Yeah.
People came to California to find gold. Who knew if they were going to fucking find gold, you know? But they fucking came all the way across from wherever they were, you know, they risked dying to come here to maybe find gold. And now people, you know, from all over the world think, oh, I want to be a fucking actor, oh, I want to be a musician, I'm going to go rough it out in LA. And there's this sense of, like, oh, it's LA, anything can happen. And in East Coast cities and bigger metropolitan cities, people are a little more realistic in the fact that they just, you see people grinding more. Definitely. And you see the hustle and bustle of life. And like I said, and everything about LA is like movie-esque. The weather is perfect. You know, you can, there's Hollywood, there's Beverly Hills, you know, the beach, Santa Monica. Like, everything about LA is like, you know, really nice, and especially seeming to like people that aren't from LA. And I think when you come to LA, you know, there's a shock that, oh shit, LA's outrageously expensive too.
Yeah.
Oh shit, LA's not clean. You know, Hollywood's a fucking dirty mess, you know. And
traffic is terrible.
And I'm not saying LA's bad, but I think that they're people have higher expectations for what the city is. And, I think I grew up, most of my life I spent out here. And I think that there is a wonderful thing about Los Angeles because you're right, your dreams can come true here. You can meet someone at a coffee shop and, get a job in a studio. You can theoretically get connected in certain industries and you can get your foot in the door in LA, easier than maybe anywhere else in the world. But I think LA kind of holds this like false reality. And New York, Boston, Chicago, you kind of associate these cities more with reality and what life is like. And I also think that's also because of the culture that comes out of those cities. The music that comes out of Chicago, the music that comes out of New York. You look at like the famous ass people that come out of New York. You look at like Jay-Z, Biggie, Wu-Tang. These are all people that have had to struggle in their lives. And these are all people that have had to do anything they possibly can to survive. And, in LA, it's Hollywood.
But what about playing devil's advocate? What about, it's not like there's not bad and tough neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Like, you have NWA that were like famous for all that.
But LA isn't the nitty gritty. That's the thing. New York is the nitty gritty. Chicago is the nitty gritty. LA isn't.
Yeah. Definitely not. That's not our
and NWA
image.
NWA countered that image. They said, fuck that. California isn't,
all sunshine and roses.
Yeah, exactly. LA is fucking Compton. LA is South Central. LA is, downtown LA. You look at like even Northern California, you look at like San Francisco. San Francisco is so romanticized. But San Francisco has a huge homeless problem. Oakland and Richmond, those are all cities that are riddled with violence.
Rich what?
Richmond. If you shout out to anyone who knows Coach Carter, great movie. But there's a different culture associated with the cities, and I think that I also think that when people move to New York, especially, people kind of expect to like not be living lavishly. I think people expect, because New York's expensive. Anyone who moves to New York, or they're probably living in an apartment with neighbors, with like roommates and stuff, and that you're probably not going to be able to afford to live in Soho, or you're not going to be able to afford to live in Chelsea or downtown. But people come to LA and they think, oh, I can afford to live in Hollywood. I can afford to live in Santa Monica, and then you realize it's $3,000 a month for a studio, and then you're moving farther and farther south and farther east, and now you run into the issues of like gentrification and these issues that are really plaguing LA, and you have a huge homeless issue here as well, and now these people are being kind of pushed out of the neighborhoods where they've lived their entire lives.